Now that President Trump has signed the funding bill, the partial government shutdown is over, but the DHS is only funded for 2 more weeks. Joining me now to discuss these developments is Virginia Republican Congressman John McGuire. Congressman, it's great to have you on tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Melina. Yes, we have 12 spending bills that we try to pass every year. We got 11 of them through, and of course, like you said, we're doing a continuing resolution for the DHS. But what the public doesn't know is that it really impacts TSA, the Coast Guard, and other things, but not necessarily ICE agents.
Now, this shutdown primarily happened because Democratic lawmakers want to set new requirements for ICE operations. What are your thoughts on them pushing this?
Well, I got to tell you, we wouldn't have a country without our men and women in law enforcement. They're just doing their job. And, you know, in red states, you don't see a lot of the problems with ICE agents because they cooperate and they work with ICE. You know, the local law enforcement do that. But in some of these sanctuary states, they're not allowing their law enforcement to cooperate. And that's why you're having a problem. Certainly, there's a coordinated effort to block and impede these law enforcement officers, which is a federal crime. But if they were working with local law enforcement, they would get in and get out, and the public would be safer. And really, they'd be safer if they let them get them while they're in the prisons. But there's a viral video of an ICE agent, a black ICE agent in a mask, and he said, "Lady, what are you doing? We're about to arrest someone who just raped a 14-year-old girl." And so they're impeding law enforcement. Like I said, I'm a limited government guy, but we should keep the people safe. You should be able to walk down any street in America with your little girl, little boy, and be safe. And they're just doing their job.
Are there any policy changes that Democrats have put forward that you think Republicans could agree to as a whole? You will have just 2 weeks to negotiate this to make sure DHS stays funded moving forward.
Yes, definitely. But, you know, the one thing is they want their mask removed. I don't agree with that because they're doxing these officers. And when they go do their job, they have to worry about their family. They're putting their children on the internet and telling them what school they go to. That's why they have to wear a mask. I mean, imagine if you had to go to work every day and you had to worry about your family. So I don't agree with that. But what I do agree with, one of the Democrat proposals, is to put body cams on the officers. I think that's a great idea because I think that protects the public and it protects the officer. I can get behind that.
And I think what you just said is in line with what Speaker Johnson has said. So he and other Republicans have signaled support for measures like requiring body cameras, like you just mentioned. But he also says he takes issue with other demands that Democrats are pushing, like the masks. They're removing the masks, saying that it could endanger those agents or their families. But Johnson also said that he opposes the expanded warrants because he says it would add more bureaucracy and make immigration enforcement more difficult. Where do you stand on policies like this?
You know, I agree with Speaker Mike Johnson. Let me tell you why. You know, under the Biden administration, we don't know. We think it's up to 20 million people came into our country illegally. And a lot of them are criminals. They've been robbing, raping, and killing the American people. You probably saw the young girl on the subway where they just keep putting these criminals out on the street, Lake and Riley. I mean, there's so many examples that these people would still be with us if we were to enforce our laws. Now, I made a list of countries and what the penalties are if you cross their border, from South Korea to Japan to Mexico to Russia. In some of these countries, you get an immediate death sentence or you spend the rest of your life in prison. You come across our border during the Biden administration, you get a pat on the back, you get free medical from taxpayers, and they put you up in a $500 a night hotel. A lot of people in my district, in Virginia's 5th district, they can't afford a taxpayer-funded $500 a night hotel room. It's not fair, and I think we need a return to fairness in our country. But you don't have a country without a border. They say that we have a housing supply crisis. What do you expect when you bring 20 million people into our country? These people came here illegally, and you think about the people that came here legally and they went through the process, and they're like, these people just cut in line. They had to wait 4 or 5 years. So I think we need to hurry up. There's so many people here. We shouldn't add more bureaucracy and we shouldn't slow it down.
All right, thanks for sharing your perspective on that topic. Let's talk for a moment about what's going on in the Middle East. You congressmen are on the House Armed Services Committee, so I want to talk about the rising tensions with Iran. Just today, a U.S. aircraft carrier struck down an Iranian drone, which aggressively approached it. There was another incident that happened. 2 Iranian gunboats approached a U.S. flagged tanker and threatened to board and seize the ship. Congressman, what do you think this signals about Iran's goals overall?
Well, Iran's acting recklessly. They still have 972 pounds of enriched uranium that could make 10 bombs. And President Trump's a pretty good negotiator. This is the tough one. But the signal from this Department of War and this president is that we have peace through strength, and we will defend the American people at home and abroad and our interest. But they are acting recklessly. But I know President Trump and the rest of the cabinet are working hard to negotiate a deal.
How do you think the U.S. should respond after what happened today?
Well, I think we need to continue to show them that we are not going to tolerate their threatening us or our allies. So I think the response was measured. We shot down their drone and we deterred those boats, and we'll escalate as needed. But we need to continue to let them know that we will stand strong. And some of the presidents in our history have threatened Iran that if you attack us, here's our red line, and then they cross the red line and we don't do anything. President Trump's not that kind of president. If he tells you this is a red line and you cross it, he's going to do something about it. So I hope they will act responsibly. No one wants war. We all want peace, but we're going to protect the American people and our interest.
All right, and we'll have to see what comes of this. Lastly, before I let you go, I want to talk about the Epstein files. You're also on the House Oversight Committee, where an investigation is underway. Former President Bill Clinton and former First Lady Hillary Clinton have now agreed to testify for you all on the Epstein files. What kind of answers will you be looking for?
Yeah, thank you for the question. During the Biden administration, they had access to all these files and they released zero. And under President Trump's administration, we've released millions of documents, and we're working on that. But what's interesting is over the last 6 months, President Clinton, former President Clinton, did all kinds of mental gymnastics and avoided and dodged everything to testify. But now that he's facing a criminal contempt of Congress and possible handcuffs, all of a sudden now before the deadline, he wants to negotiate. What's interesting is Republican and Democrat FBI directors and attorney generals have come in and testified. But he has tried everything, and that should tell you something about, just because you have a different last name, you're not above the law. So what I'd like to know is, how did this horrible human trafficker, sex trafficker, Epstein, how did he infiltrate the highest levels of the U.S. government? Were Bill and Hillary Clinton compromised? Were there other politicians compromised? Were there world leaders compromised? What I'm hoping that we will find out is how to strengthen anti-human trafficking laws. How did they get away with it? How did Epstein get through this system and get covered up? We've got to protect the American people, and we've got to protect children. And so I'm looking for those answers.
All right. Well, we'll be looking out to see how that testimony goes when the end of the month comes and those two are in there testifying before you all. Hopefully you're able to get something out of them. Thank you, Congressman, for your time.